When I was younger, I lived in a small town located in the middle of nowhere. It was an old and mysterious place. Everyone seemed to know each other. Neighbors tended to gossip to pass the time, and there were lots of small businesses and abandoned buildings. My younger brother and I shared a small room on the second floor of a rundown apartment. Our window faced directly to a forest, and within those trees was a hidden railroad. Sometimes my brother and I would jump the fence to play hopscotch in between the train tracks, despite our mother always scolding us for hanging out there. Thankfully, the train never came at the time that we were there. If anything, I noticed that I only heard the sounds of the train at night. I'd never actually seen the train in person. On a Sunday afternoon, my mom had taken my brother to the store with her, and I was left home alone. At this time I was only 7, so I took this opportunity to visit the railroad behind my house by myself. I played hopscotch alone in between the metal bars. Even without my brother there, I almost felt like I was being watched. Deep inside myself, I knew I wasn't alone in that overgrown forest. Within the distance, I could hear light footsteps hit the leaves. The air was very foggy, but in the mist I could see the silhouette of a person. He looked like an adult, and I could tell he was making his way towards me. As he stepped closer, the fog seemed to move past him, and I could clearly see what he looked like. The man was wearing an old-style conductor outfit, and had a funny little mustache that curled at the ends. Once he approached me, I stood there frozen, and didn't really know how to react. The conductor didn't seem to be a bad person at first, and if anything, he reminded me of my grandpa. A warm and tender feeling radiated off of him, but he looked like he could fade away at any moment. He told me that I should hurry home, and myself, being an annoying kid, questioned him. The man looked down at me, and I could feel the sweat build up on my back as his whole aura changed. He was no longer a friendly old man trying to warn me, but a terrifying figure that was giving me a threat. He said a sentence that made me back up a little bit in fear.
Child, the train might run over you one day if you're not careful.
I don't know why, but my legs began sprinting back into the direction of my home. At the time I was just a scared child, so I didn't even think of the possibility of him following me. When I got back home, my family was unloading groceries. My mom seemed to notice I was out of breath, but didn't comment on it. All she told me to do was to help put food into the fridge, and after that, I spent the rest of my day watching TV until it was time to go to sleep. At the time, my younger brother and I shared a bed. I slept at the edge, right next to the window. My brother had fallen into a deep sleep, but I couldn't seem to drift off. As I laid there wide awake in bed, the distant sounds of the train running reminded me of the conductor. An odd sense of peace washed over me as I fell asleep, listening to the train travel past my room. A couple of years later, I forgot about the whole incident and moved out of the city for college. However, I came back to visit my mother. We were eating together at a restaurant when I brought up how I met the city's train conductor as a kid. She seemed confused, so I ended up telling her the whole story. My mother stayed silent for a bit, then said something that still makes my heart beat when I replay it in my mind. You know, the train system in our town was inactive long before you were born. So whoever you saw was not the train conductor, and whatever you heard at night was not the train. My mother told me the real reason on why she didn't like my brother and I going to the railroads by ourselves. It was like the city's personal ghost story. The train of death, also known as the most efficient route to the afterlife, with all of its passengers being ghosts. If you aren't careful, the conductor might mistake you for dead and take you along for the ride.